So, you have the attention span of a goldfish. At least, that's what it feels like anyway, since every time you finally sit down to study or work, you get maybe like 5 minutes of focused work in before bam, you're suddenly mindlessly scrolling through Reels or YouTube. And recently, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to actually watch through an entire 10-minute long-form YouTube video. And scariest of all, if we multiply our average screen time by 365 days in a year times our average lifespan when we're using our phones, that's almost 20 years of our life that we're wasting away. So in an age of ever-increasing distractions, how on earth do we fix our attention spans and... Oh right, the voiceover! So in today's video, if I can actually manage to focus long enough to create it and you can focus long enough to fully watch it, we'll be going over evidence-based tips and hacks to save our attention spans and 20 years of our life. Alrighty, so before we fix our attention span, we kind of need to know what that even means. So the definition of an attention span is simply the length of time for which a person is able to concentrate mentally on a particular activity. And lately, there's been more and more articles screaming about how our attention spans are decreasing and we have the attention span shorter than that of a goldfish, and thankfully that statistic turns out to be a completely false myth and has since been debunked. And also, upon researching, I couldn't really find any truly meaningful long-term research actually proving that our overall attention spans are really shrinking, but there is some research that has been pointing to the fact that our phones and social media, particularly short-form content, has likely been negatively impacting our ability to focus. Okay, so that's it, right? Social media is the big bad culprit destroying attention, so if we just delete social media once and for all, our attention span will be saved and we'll be super productive, right? Well, I actually quit social media multiple times in the past myself, and unfortunately, it did not work. Instead of scrolling, I started binge reading fantasy books instead. Then once I got bored of that, I switched to binge watching anime shows, then K-dramas, then browsing celebrity news, etc, etc. And when at one point I finally decided to just try quitting screens altogether, I ended up listening to music all day long and then daydreaming fictional scenarios in my head instead. In short, I was still as distracted as ever, even without social media. That is, until one fateful day I came across the book Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business, which caught my attention because I realized that that's exactly what I was doing. In essence, I was compulsively seeking forms of amusement throughout the day and was essentially addicted to constant entertainment, no matter what form it was in. This realization was further reinforced by the book Dopamine Nation, which I highly recommend to anyone over the age of 18, since trigger warning, the beginning is quite graphic. The author of the book, a professor of psychiatry at Stanford, talks about how she got addicted to romance novels to the point where she was compulsively reading instead of cooking, instead of sleeping, instead of spending time with her family, and not surprisingly, her career, marriage, and overall life started to suffer because of that. That really struck a chord in me because I've always loved reading, but I suddenly realized that any activity in extremes can be detrimental or used as a form of procrastination, and that even an accomplished genius professor with her dream career and family can still struggle with compulsive escapism. Similarly, I used to struggle with unhealthy eating habits and a mild addiction to snacking when I was a teenager as well. I would basically need to get up like every 30 minutes to grab something to eat, usually junk food. So it's no surprise that at one point I was borderline pre-diabetic because I had gotten my body so used to just snacking nonstop throughout the day, spiking insulin constantly, and never giving my digestive system a break. So what on earth does any of this have to do with our attention spans? Well, you see, both actions, snacking and entertainment consumption, were constantly spiking my dopamine, aka a neurotransmitter and hormone that gives us feelings of pleasure, happiness, and reward. And because I was constantly interrupting my study and work sessions to get those easy dopamine hits from food or from entertainment, I was consequently preventing myself from ever getting focused or in a state of flow. And since understanding the problem is half of the solution, we need to understand that our seemingly shrinking attention span is just a symptom of the root issue: compulsive overconsumption, or in essence, an addiction that keeps distracting us. It's like trying to sail in a boat full of holes. You first need to plug the holes and then sail away to your goals. Okay, great, but what's the solution? How do we retain our ability to focus for long periods of time? How do we stop being addicted to entertainment or snacking or just anything that's ruining our lives? Luckily, Dopamine Nation and Mindset are two books that cover the answers to all those questions, so I'll be going over some of the main tips and solutions from both books in this video, but again, I highly recommend actually checking them out yourself. Thankfully, Blinkist, the sponsor of today's video, has both available so you can read or listen to the main condensed points of each book. The Blinkist app is used by 31 million users and gives you actionable summaries from over 6,500 nonfiction books and podcasts in just 15 minutes. And with our seemingly dwindling attention spans, it's super helpful to have books broken down into bite-sized blinks or mini book summaries with key points so that we can get the main, most useful information in a fraction of the time and figure out if we actually want to purchase the book or not. And since the typical social media user now spends 2 hours and 23 minutes per day using social platforms, Blinkist book summaries can help you easily create a learning habit instead of scrolling through social media, as 80% of Blinkist users have replaced doom scrolling with Blinkist. Again, I highly recommend checking out the blinks for Dopamine Nation, since Blinkist thankfully cut out the more graphic portions of the book, so get 40% off Blinkist annual premium. Start your 7-day free trial by clicking the link in the description box or scanning the QR code. So step number 1 is to do a dopamine detox or fast in order to rewire our brain. You've probably heard of this concept before, but it's essentially just quitting or severely limiting the things that you're addicted to or relying on. You can go cold turkey and completely quit once and for all, or limit the amount of time during the day, or gradually taper down over several weeks how much you consume, or limit your use of your phone or the activity to a specific room or place. I personally originally opted for intermittent fasting for both food and entertainment, since complete elimination was just a bit too extreme for me. Essentially, I limited the amount of hours and the time when I could eat food and when I could go on social media, read, watch something, etc. Also, whenever I would be studying or working, I would put my book away or my phone away in airplane mode or in focus mode and just tell myself that I'll have it once I'm done with my work. Also, I recommend time blocking out when you have a certain time block to do your work or your studying without your phone or without your entertainment or distractions, based on your schedule the next day of when you have classes or work, etc. So the next step is to gamify your habits or goals and make them more fun. For instance, if you try to study 90 minutes straight without distractions but can't make it past 45 minutes, just time yourself and see how long you can initially last. Turn it into a game of sorts and track how long you can study straight and watch as the amount slowly but surely rises, and you can do the same thing with the amount of time that you've gone without entertaining yourself or without using distractions. Also, by tracking your progress or streaks, it can make the process a lot more enjoyable. And I want to emphasize, it's absolutely okay if you're not even close to perfect in the beginning. You'll need to train your brain slowly to build up your attention span and also get used to not constantly have the dopamine hits. So this next step, which is to reward yourself, is probably hands down the most important part of this entire process. Your goal is to basically intentionally increase your dopamine every time you manage to stick to your goal of not touching your phone or not eating all day long, and also to praise yourself every time that you manage to go a certain amount of time, like 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, non-stop without any distractions when you're studying or working. It turns out that we can choose what we feel rewarded by, and if we start consciously trying to keep mentally rewarding and praising ourselves every time we do something good or avoid doing something bad, then we can start to create our own reward cycle where we start to genuinely enjoy that feeling of relief and freedom when we're not glued to our phones and when we're actually finally getting work done. And last but not least is learning slowly but surely to use your free time wisely. First off, try to replace at least some of your scrolling time or some of your entertainment time with meditation or just some kind of mindfulness activity. When I was researching about improving focus, the vast majority of sources said that meditation was the most effective tool for training your brain's attention span and ability to focus, since you're literally learning to control your own thoughts and attention and awareness of your own body and the world around you. Also, try to pick a hobby that you can do in your free time, especially stuff involving movement like sports or socializing, so that you can create memories and have fun with others. Also, check out my high value hobbies video if you're interested in some hobby ideas. And if you do ultimately end up scrolling, try to make yourself watch through a whole long form video and avoid short form ones if you can. Also, I'm not trying to demonize entertainment or movies or YouTube channels or shows or music in any way. Again, everything is totally fine in moderation where it's not controlling and taking over your life. Social media has so much useful information out there, and you can can actually sort of create your own peer group or circle that you customly pick that can motivate you or teach you so many new things. So by picking valuable content or creators that add to your life, you can literally uplift your life by using social media the right way. And last but not least, I want to make it clear that while we are responsible for our own actions, we are not broken or lazy. There are billions of dollars poured into the entertainment industry and the food industry, and marketers and businesses are getting smarter and better at making addicting products that suck us in. So please, 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 as Sabrina Carpenter would say, do not beat yourself up for having this problem, because trust me, pretty much all of us have it. If you start this journey from a place of self-hate and negativity, you'll only end up consuming even more content and even more entertainment in order to escape from that self-deprecating voice in your head. And again, remember that it's all about progress, not perfection, and expect failures. Even if you relapse occasionally, just accept that it comes with a process. Breaking any addiction is super hard, and it is totally normal to struggle. I have been there a million times. I've still had days where I was glued to my phone or I couldn't hold an intermittent fast, but that's fine. It's still way better than the old me who was doing all those bad habits daily. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you found it helpful and useful. And squirrel! You can go go. I'm not Scottish. Why am I saying you can go? You can go.